So people ask me all the time how I got involved and started with numbers and became interested in data. For myself personally, it was by reading the back of baseball cards and the box scores from the previous day's game. On Sundays, the Associated Press would put out this magnificent back page on the sports section, which listed all of the teams' aggregated data. I mean, they were just team scores and batting averages and those things. But now that we're at a conference to discuss this, we can call it aggregated data. I grew up, my family owned a pizzeria. If anyone's from New Jersey, Freddy's Pizza, if Masbury Park in Long Branch, and familiar with any of those areas, there we go. So my grandfather, who spent most of his time at the pizzeria, started to realize that I had this hobby about numbers and data, specifically as they related to baseball. And all of a sudden, he became interested in my knowledge and passion for numbers and data as well, specifically kinds of questions like, what's Brett Saberhagen's ERA this year, and how do the Minnesota Twins hit versus right-handers, you know? So he was tapping into my knowledge. I was able to use that knowledge downstairs last night. Go Lakers. Those last couple of free throws are remarkably important. But that was my baptism into data. Reading baseball cards and looking at numbers and trying in my head to figure out how things were going to go when my beloved New York Yankees were going to play that day. Today, I am Dr. Scott Larkin. I'm the principal at New Hanover Township Elementary School in Wrightstown, New Jersey, and I am so grateful and so thankful to be here because last year was my first year using Tableau, and last year I sat right where you were for the first time trying to figure out what this program was capable of doing and how it was that I was going to take what I knew about data and numbers and blend them into a program that is remarkably more powerful than I am capable of using. So I will tell you right off the bat as a disclaimer, my Viz game is elementary at best. It's terrible. It's very rudimentary. And my purpose here today is not to show you anything fancy, although there may be some fancy stuff, but to show you how I use Tableau to help little kids do better in school. And that basic premise. And so to see folks coming, I would check in every 5 minutes on my little speaker page to see how many people signed up. I don't know, 171 was the final number. Because it's lunchtime, I don't know that we exactly have 171, but that's about 170 more than I anticipated would come, quite honestly, you know? The first one, and I tell you, the second that it turned on and it said 25, I was like, oh my goodness, 25 people care about this. And so thank you for looking for ways to help kids do better in school. And I'm going to talk a lot, I guess also as a disclaimer, I'll talk a lot about standardized test scores. And in that is a whole other debate that I'm not here. It's the way we keep score in education in the state of New Jersey and probably everyone else's state. It's the rules of the game. I will, if anyone else is from New Jersey, I will show just PARCC. That includes PARCC and the New Jersey Student Learning, New Jersey Student, or NJSLA. If anyone wants to show me what the difference is, please, I would love to know. I'm still looking. So again, thank you everyone. So before I started using Tableau, I was always a numbers guy. I was always a data guy. But what I found was, and as teachers and school administrators, we are innately data people, right? As a teacher, I used data to assess kids to produce a number every 10 weeks or so that indicated how well that kid was doing in my class. That data involved homework scores, test scores, quiz scores, student participation, which was my way of making sure everybody got what they were supposed to get, the magical student participation grade. And so I coached too. I coached football. And the amount of time I spent using data in football was gross, I think, looking back on it, compared to the time that I spent using data to assess student learning. I apologize. What was the other team going to run on first down? What were their favorite running plays? Who were we going to run at because the other team had the most, what player had the most missed tackles? But all of those data points were things that I were using. But what I found in looking back on it, all of those data points were simply descriptive. They just described something. They described something at the end. There was no look at correlation or causation, and there was nothing that I could do with those numbers other than to show them. I remember as a student teacher, my first parent-teacher conferences, rolling out these numbers, and so these parents say, well, your kid is getting a 75 in class. What does that mean? That he knows 3/4 of what you've taught him? And I'm like, it means he needs to do more homework. Is really, and that's another debate, the homework debate, right? Everyone that failed my class when I taught, if you did great, it's because you did your homework every night. If you failed, it's because you didn't do your homework. And I think, was I teaching U.S. history or teaching homework? Ultimately, it was teaching homework. So I progressed. I became such a wonderful teacher, right? I was an incredible teacher. I figured that I deserved a promotion. And in our field, promotion means administrator. So I was going to be this awesome teacher that was just going to flow into becoming this awesome administrator. And little did I know, they're two completely separate jobs. And those things that I felt made me prepared, right? I was this awesome teacher. I was going to be this awesome administrator. And all of a sudden I realized they're two completely separate jobs. And the skill set that I believe prepared me for this promotion no longer mattered whatsoever. And so all of a sudden, as an admin, I became part judge, part detective, part accountant, part lawyer, part doctor, part custodian. And the mix of those two can be very unpleasant, but that happens. And so I kept going, and I went back and earned my doctorate, which was a real source of pride for me and for my family. And so with that title of doctor, I was bestowed upon me the title, not just doctor, but academic. And now I was set off into the world to do academic research and to write about it. And through the process of doing my dissertation, I started to really delve deep into inferential statistics, which was wildly different from the kinds of things that I had been doing. And now I was looking at data, and I was testing for causation. Not just what correlated, not just what looked like something mattered on a piece of paper, but I was looking to give reasons and find specifically, I can recall my chair always telling me, define the problem, define the problem, define the problem. You're not defining the problem specifically enough. So I set out to do the research and write my dissertation, and I used horrible programs like SPSS. Anyone else work at SPSS? You can get Excel to do certain things, but you have to highlight it in a weird way and put it someplace weird on the sheet, and it'll produce the numbers that you're looking for. It can do it. But ultimately, what I did was write down all of my numbers on index cards. And here I was in 2000 and whatever it was, going all the way backward to complete the statistical portion of the most important document of my life using a calculator and index cards. And I thought to myself, my goodness, there has to be a better way. So all during this time, I was the chief presenter at my school district. and again, sticking just to the descriptive stuff. I was out in Burlington County, again, New Jersey people. I was all throughout curing insomnia throughout Burlington County with my PowerPoint presentations. In fact, I gave the absolute all-time worst PowerPoint presentation when I taught. It was like the first PowerPoint that I learned. It was 65 slides that I thought I was going to give on the Industrial Revolution in 47 minutes. And when I tell you, it had absolutely every single animation swooped in, typewriter, everything. I think maybe I got through 9 slides, and I made sure that my supervisor came and saw what I was doing with technology. And it was the best evaluation I ever got in my life, and it was the worst lesson that I can think back on any teacher possibly giving, as the kids sat there, lights off, heads down, what in the world is going on here? So I got into Death by PowerPoint, and again, I was doing descriptive analyses of how we did each year on PARCC, how we did each year on NJ Ask, going backwards a little bit, and I would compare those numbers to other districts, and I would make sure that when I did those comparisons, I found the right district to beat to make sure, yeah, we're going to get Beverly every single year, but we'll leave Plumstead out because they do better than us, so they don't want to. We won't talk about Plumstead. And so now, once I became Dr. Larkin and I was doing all of these crazy hypothesis testing, and I was now able to present the exact same data, but now I was able to do a t-test on it for statistical significance. And very, very quickly, when I started to do that kind of stuff, when what I find, and I don't want to say you, I apologize, it's one of the things I'm working on. When I talk about numbers, people stop listening and people don't believe you. Someone told me one time, if you torture numbers long enough, you can get them to say whatever you want. Right? And that's what I was doing. I was torturing the numbers. And I was talking about z-scores and ANOVAs and ANCOVAs and all of these crazy things, and I would put up numbers, and folks on our board, 2 of whom are professional farmers, school teachers, homemakers, Department of Agriculture, folks that haven't studied numbers would listen to me, and I would put up numbers from this year's test compared to last year's test, because that's what they wanted to do. And when we went down, I would explain that by saying, well, see, our t-score of -0.9 means that there's no reason to think that what took place this year didn't happen by chance compared to anything else that we did. And when I told that story, when I would tell that piece of information to our board and to our public, the looks on their faces of just disbelief, distrust, why is this person up here trying to make us believe something that just simply isn't true? When I would get up there and go through all the crazy formulas, people would tune out immediately. And when I would tell them that, some years we had a large enough sample size for statistical significance, some years we didn't. It depended on how well we did, right? If we didn't do well, it's just, hey, our N was only 27 in that subgroup. Don't even worry about that. We'll just put that to the side. So as I'm doing these PowerPoints, and truth be told, I got rejected by IBM Watson. I don't know if there are any Tableau people here. To heck with them, to heck with Watson, but I think they were right to reject me. I was looking for a better way to just analyze our data. I was looking for a quicker way to conduct statistical analysis. I was looking for a way to produce faster T-scores and Z-scores and all of those other things that meant absolutely nothing to anyone except me. And doctoral chairs and folks in universities, but those didn't mean anything to parents, didn't mean anything to teachers and board members and kids. Right? Kids don't know Z-scores and T-scores. So in the process of searching for a faster way to conduct the analytics part of it, my Google search tumbled upon Tableau. And I picked up the phone and called, and I explained to an absolutely incredible salesperson what it was that I wanted, what it was that I thought I wanted to do. And Kat told me, you know what, I think we can partner a little bit. Somehow, and I still don't know how, we had leftover federal dollars, and I promise you I am not a use it or lose it kind of guy. I am okay talking to the federal monitors when we have Title II money left over and said we spent every bit of it that we reasonably could. If you want to give us $2,000 less next year, I'm okay with that. But last year somehow I was able to convince our board to send me to New Orleans to learn about this new visualization software, right? I got the 30-day trial, and I just sat down and I just started to play, and within 15 minutes I was doing things that I'd never done before, and I was seeing numbers do things that I had never seen them do before. And so I presented to the board a very, very, very basic viz that they were blown away by, and I said, I want to go to New Orleans and I want to learn how to do this in a way that's going to identify problems for us for the purpose of being efficient, for the purpose of being individualized, and for the purpose of helping our kids learn better. Sounded good to me. And then when they voted yes, I was like, I'm sorry, did you say yes? Because they all thought I was going to go to New Orleans to party, right? Same thing with coming to Las Vegas. Oh, yeah, well, good. Hey, have a good time in New Orleans. I did. I had an amazing time in New Orleans. And I learned more about statistics and data and visualization and Tableau. So now I am living post-Tableau. My life after Tableau, from a leadership standpoint, has been completely different. When the numbers tell the story, people believe it. When the data tells the board, the parents, the kids, when the data speaks, it's believable. I'm just not, for whatever reason. It's been something that's plagued me my whole life. I'm just not believable. But when the data is put up on the screen and folks can just see it, numbers don't lie, people do. I don't, but it seems like I do. And now decision making for me became great. I was getting there's some politics and education, sure. I was being able to take those issues that were politicized locally, and I was able to present them in a way that made sense. I was able to present ideas, and I'll show you one today, that was able to run over the business office. And finally, I had the tool that was going to break all of their pencils in half, and it would make sense, and I was able to do that. So today, after Tableau, I'm a much better school leader. And our kids are doing better, and during the presentation today, we're going to see some of that. Oops, I already missed my first slide. So, who we are New Hanover Township School, and one of the things I love about Tableau is we are a small, teeny, tiny dot in the educational world. We are a pre-K to 8 district, located, depending if you're from New Jersey, I say it's South Jersey, but if you're from New Jersey, you'll say that it's Central New Jersey, that's the whole thing. We are, it's in Wrightstown, it's right outside of Joint Base Dix McGuire and Lakehurst. It's where they have the largest refueling jets. You can even see here in the picture some of the streams. That's from these gigantic airplanes that fly by. We have no military kids, so ours pre-K to 8 entire district, and everyone who's not from New Jersey, please don't roll your eyes, we're 200 kids, an entire district. So we are 65% economically disadvantaged. That is, 65% of our students qualify for free or reduced lunch. Approximately 1/5 of our students are classified for special education, and about 1/4 of our students are English learners. All of those numbers have been increasing over the last 10 years, really dramatically over the last 5 years, and really off the charts over the last 3 years. And all of those are the traditionally gapped classes. So we are facing challenges as we move forward at New Hanover. And there we are, right? What a great looking group of kids. That's us. You know what? When people want to see and they want to come visit the school, I always take them to the cafeteria. Just take a look. There we are. There we are in the bottom right is our 8th grade graduating class. That's all of them. There aren't any more that are in the picture. That's our school. And our play and our little kindergartners with the obligatory Dr. Seuss hats on Read Across America Day. And one of the things that I love about Tableau as a program and as a group of people is that even though our graduating class there was about 20 kids, the kind of attention that I have received has been remarkable. The phone calls back, and this isn't a sales plug, and when I was going over this, they told me, no, tell the story. You're not a salesman, but I'm going to give a little pitch here because I can't help it. The amount of attention that was given to a guy who's the principal of a school that with 200 kids at a conference where the folks from Facebook might even be next door for all I know, to me was remarkable. What I also found was as I'm sitting in all these different seminars last year, thinking how does this apply to us because our data sets are so small, it hit me like, whoa, wait a second. It's more applicable to us because we have the capability of reaching a level of granularity that other end users simply just can't. We can drill so deep into what our data sets are telling us, and we can really find problems, and we can prove that there are problems. And when we come up with action plans, they can be based on things that we know to be factual. All right. Which takes me to one of the shifts that I have fought against, and that we're able to do because the way that we treat data is we're making a shift from decisions based on I think versus decisions based on I know, right? Imagine if you walked into the doctor with a terrible, terrible cough. Doctor listens to the cough and says, sounds like a cold. Here's a prescription. Go take a couple of cough drops and over-the-counter medication that doesn't do anything, and off you go. And you think to yourself, wow, that would have been a lot better if he'd listened with a stethoscope, or maybe taken a chest x-ray to see if there's something really wrong. But that doctor, with his experience, right, gave an I think. I wouldn't feel great about that. And we were making decisions based on I think. And I think decisions come from a great place, right? They're based, unfortunately, on guesses, hunches, or intuition. I've listened to a lot of folks who just know. When a kid signs into school, at a number of, and I've worked at several districts, so if this is recorded and the teachers in my current building watch it one day, I'm not just talking about you, I promise. When a kid registers, we'll spend about 10 minutes in class and be down in my office or in the child study team office and just know. Oh, I just know that this kid has dyslexia. I just know that this kid has a learning disability. Again, I think decisions are rooted in experience. And in a lot of ways, that's fantastic. And that experience plays a part in the decision-making process. But if it plays the only role and the biggest role, then you can wind up with problems. I think decisions are also impacted dramatically by conformational bias. Right, I know I do this all the time myself. I want something to be true. I want the Cleveland Browns to be good. I have thought that from the beginning. Every week the Cleveland Browns are going to get good. They're just like the Miami Heat. When LeBron James, it's just going to take them a couple of weeks. The Cleveland Browns are not good. As much as my conformational bias will tell me every week that I want the Cleveland Browns to be good, they're just not going to. People have a hard time fighting their cognitive dissonance. That part, the Cleveland Browns, wait a second, Baker Mayfield threw 2 more interceptions, and then I'm going to ignore that. Last year, he was fantastic. This is the 3rd week in a row he's done that. It doesn't matter. He won the Heisman Trophy. He was a first-round pick. 175 yards passing, that's okay. Last year against the Chargers, he threw for 400 yards. It doesn't matter. Currently, the Browns are not good. Again, my apologies if anyone's from Ohio. And again, also that idea of belief, perseverance, and we all do this. The hardcore sense that what we are doing is right. And no matter what, we're going to fit situations into what we believe to be is right. And we're going to convince ourselves and we're going to validate ourselves and make ourselves right. I love the words, "you're right." It makes me feel fantastic. And I am spend a lot of time watching Dr. Phil, sorry, I just do. I'm a right fighter, so I'm spending a lot of time on I think. And I think decisions pushed us towards things like overclassification of students. We always, I know I've been caught in that struggle between teachers and child study team. Child study, and if there are any child study team members out here, I feel for you, because either you want to classify every single student in the building or you refuse to classify any student in the building. There's no gray area. There's never a belief. There's infrequently a belief that child study teams want to gather data first, not just for the purpose of not classifying a kid, but for the purpose of making sure that it's the proper classification and for making sure that that kid does deserve services. So I think decisions lead to overclassification. I think decisions also lead to that soft lowering of expectations. I'll never forget one of my, as a young administrator, sitting with a superintendent, and someone walked into our office and she said about a kid, he can't read. It was a 3rd grader. Can't read. And the superintendent at the time went nuts. I've never seen anyone react like this. What do you mean can't read? Can't read I, can't read the, can't read can't read dog, can't read cat. And then the teacher backpedaled, oh, no, they can read those words. Oh, so it's not a case of can't read, it's a case of not reading up to grade level. That's a completely different story. Don't walk into my office and tell me a kid can't read if he can read something, because that's a place for us to start on. Also, I think decisions puts us, we're putting ourselves in a place where we're not developing the kind of individual instructional program that kids need. And every kid can get one, not just kids with IEPs. Teachers will come to me all the time and say, I need this kid classified in math. Well, okay, all right, let's do that. We'll classify the kid in math. What would you do for him? Well, we'd give him more manipulatives. Okay, what else? I want to give him less homework, you know? Like when he does math, you get 25 problems, and they're all the same concept. And if if the kid only had to do 10 problems, it'd be a lot easier for him. We got to put that in an IEP. I'd say, you know what? Just between you and me, go ahead and do it. You can go ahead and all of those things that you would want into a kid's IEP, just go ahead and do it now. You don't need a document. You don't need a piece of paper. You don't need signatures and meetings to do good teaching. Also, I have to become admin guy at some point. I think decisions were leading us into gross inefficiencies about where we need to allocate our best resource, and that's our teachers. One of the decisions that we figured out in terms of our personnel allocation was we were running an after-school program using federal grant dollars. We were able to take a look and really make some analytic decisions about how those kids were doing, and we saw that after school might not have been the most efficient place. We took that money and we shifted it over to a basic skills program. Really like a very basic decision, but a major decision because it represented a significant shift in how it was that we taught kids. And it was a decision based on things that we knew, that were based on data, how these kids were scoring, not just on their state exams, but how they were doing in their grades. It was a decision that was based on deduction, not induction. Use the scientific method, and we accounted for all those different crazy things like threat to validity and potential bias. All right, so when we get into dashboards here today, again, I apologize for the plainness of it. Lines and bars, man, lines and bars go a long, long way. I stay off of Tableau Public, right? Like, how do they do any of that? My goodness, with my son, I was able to, do a viz with a picture of Yankee Stadium, and I thought it was the rarest thing ever. But then you look at that public stuff, and you just feel like a complete idiot. So stay away from public. It really doesn't have anything to do with what I do. Anyway, so I stick to bars and lines. It's a real efficient use of my time and a real effective way to display the data and allow it to speak. So what I'm going to do today is show 3 dashboards that I conducted, one for myself, one for a student and her parents, and one dashboard that I created for the staff, the community, and our Board of Education. So again, thinking back to my days as a doctoral student, you have to define the problem. You have to define the problem, right? We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. I don't see the back quotation mark. We'll have to take a look at that. I apologize. So with that, let's take a look at some specific problems. Specific to New Hanover Township, specific to the people in our data set, and specific to the numbers. All right. First problem up for bid. Low student achievement as measured by PARCC Assessments in ELA. And that's just with my eyes looking at our ELA scores in PARCC. They just look bad. So we needed them to look better because there are 2 parts to that. We have a Board of Education that we answer to. We have a State Department of Education that we answer to. And those numbers, if they don't look good to those people, are going to be bad for us. But also, again, we'll go back to the testing argument. Here's my thought, my personal opinion. This is the way I've always viewed it. PARCC assesses the standards. The tests, the kids are tested on how well they know the standards. Society created those standards. So we don't teach to the test, we teach to the standards. And I know that's so cliche, and I apologize to anyone who's heard that a zillion times. And so if the standards aren't appropriate, and I haven't seen anything in PARCC that would lead me to believe it's an inaccurate assessment of those standards. If the standards are incorrect, the argument is then with society and those folks who wrote those standards. So again, assessment is our lifeblood. Going back to the doctor when you're sick. I used to work at a hospital. I was, when I was in college, I was a body bagger, by the way, you know, right? You can't leave me there. That's what I was just saying. So if you're sick, the doctors use all kinds of assessments to find out exactly what's wrong. So these PARCC assessments for us, yes, they take up class time, and yes, they're just one snapshot of one kid, but it also, more than telling us what our kids know, more importantly, and not just PARCC assessments, but our formative assessments too, and our summative assessments, all of those things, they tell us what our kids don't know. That's what we want to know, what they don't know. I tell my teachers all the time, like, don't grade homework. You give a lesson and give the kid homework, he takes it home. And I wish my own kid's teacher, like, don't help him. Don't help the kid. Do your homework. The ones that you got wrong, bring back and show the teacher that you got those wrong, because that means that you don't get that. And that's what we need to teach, not the things that we know already. That's not learning. That's just celebrating and patting on the back, right? Learning is taking that coin from I don't get it to I do get it. And unless we're able to identify exactly what our kids don't get, then we won't be learning. So when I do dashboards for myself, I care to think of it like a Jackson Pollock painting, right? Where I'll just slap stuff on there and the answers will start to jump out at me. So as I begin to put data on a dashboard, things start to pop up, and I will use filters to create evolving multiple hypotheses, very low on artistry and very high on data. So what I did for this first one is I converted it into story form so it would be easier to follow, but at one point I want you to think about all of these different worksheets crunched into one horrific dashboard that I would never show anyone. Wait a second. I'm also using online here just because it's easier. All right. So in school year 17-18, I'm looking at the numbers, and I began to realize that we had quite a gender gap. Now, keeping in mind, I edited the axis. These are scaled scores. They start at 650 and go up to 850. I don't know what the difference between 0 and 200 is, unless you don't want a kid to get a 200. But then why not start it? Oh, anyway, so I fixed the axes here to match the scale of the test. And again, this was one particular hypothesis that I was testing as I went through our data, that our female students were scoring much higher in ELA than our male students. Okay, not uncommon, but time for me and us to drill down to find out why and see if we can know what the problem is. For filters, here's a little trick. The all button is always very helpful to me. If anyone has used the program before, sometimes when you use the filter, it includes and sometimes it excludes, and you can come up with a completely wrong conclusion because you didn't realize till the end that you were excluding data instead of including it, so really it was completely off. So I always check the all to make sure that I'm working with inclusive data. So what I did was took our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, again, that 65% that were on free and reduced lunch. And I said, well, let me test that subgroup for male-female. And I filtered out male-female, and here we are, another big gap. Still gender holding up. Then I checked by grade level. No, these are students with disabilities. You're starting to get the point. And towards the end, what I stumbled upon was what I saw was the most significant issue for us in creating those differentials, and it was in writing. Again, the writing scale starts at 10, so we're looking at a 5-point difference in the writing scores for our female students than our male students. So that then becomes a problem that I know about. And so, now that I know about the problem, and this is a very important part in social science research, go to the research. I had never realized and never thought that our students, particularly in the middle school, in the middle school grades, our male students would have lower writing scores. And for some of you out there, you're like, duh, obviously. I went out into the world of research and found out, boy, that's a very prevalent issue across society. And I didn't have to come up with the answers. The researchers already had the answers. The researchers already tried different solutions and were able to test those solutions, and I was able to match up in the research things that would work for us. So when I say school newspaper, right? Wow, what a remarkable, what a genius, a remarkable find to come up with a school newspaper. Whoa. Graphic novels, let the kids read comic books, and writer's choice, all those things that we probably should have been doing from the beginning. But when I say school newspaper, the point of our school newspaper is not to inform the public how the soccer team did. It's to encourage our male students to get out there and write about things and topics that they like, not to write in journals about how they feel about the previous night's reading. They're not going to do it, and that's not my opinion. That's something that I know because other folks have researched it and our own data backs it up. Right? So what happens? This is 1 year, right? In 2019, our male writing scores improved by almost 10% with just that one little simple thing. And again, is it me teaching to the test and having our teachers do that? No, it's not. It's identifying a real and actual problem and presenting solutions that in one single year improved that much. And it's just getting better. This one may be my favorite, but problem number 2 that we're going to look at. A teacher comes to me and says, this student is not succeeding in any metric that we can find. Not in grades, not in statewide assessments, not in attendance, not in discipline, nothing. So when the teacher and I brought the student in, I said, what do you want? You know, what's the goal here? What's the end game for you? And she said, I want to make honor roll. No one in my family, and we'd had a lot of kids from her family, no one in my family's ever made honor roll. I said, okay, well, let me see what we can do. So I went and downloaded all of her grade data, and I created her own viz. And again, bars and lines. And this was a presentation that I gave to a student and her mother and the teacher. And we sat down, and I got to tell you, Again, you can go to that public gallery and be as amazed as you want, but try sitting down with a kid and her mom and let them look at something as basic as that, and they will be mesmerized. Not only with the technology, and again, this is as basic as it comes, not only with the technology, but that you cared enough to create something that's just about someone's kid. It's a remarkable thing, so I got up there and to do my Tableau wizardry, and I knew what the answer was beforehand. Don't tell anyone. I knew where the problems lied because I had looked at the numbers and they really weren't involved, I think. So I put in some kind of filter there where we could just look at ELA scores, and we put in a filter there where we can just look at math scores. And what was remarkable when we met with Mom, she's not doing the homework on Monday and Tuesday. And when we talked to the teacher, homework over the weekend and on Monday was a reading log, right? Her ELA homework was a reading log. You had to read and you had to sign. And, Mom shook her head and she kind of rolled her eyes a little bit and huffed and puffed because kid is with Dad on the weekends and Monday night. And so in further discussions, Dad wasn't as interested in having the kid do a half hour of reading and sign off on the reading log because Dad wanted to do other things. And I get that. But that opened a conversation, and I had a relationship enough with Mom to say, that's between you and Dad. I need you to have that conversation because it's hurting her. It's hurting her grade. It's pulling everything down. She's capable of doing much better. And that old homework thing, as an administrator, I'm perfectly cool with reading. You want to become smarter, read more, so I'm perfectly cool with that as homework over the weekend. But that's what we found was going on there. And in math, right, her average score for the year, that 66, 70s passing for us. Having problems on tests. So the teacher and I went further into her test scores, and not only did we, it wasn't a matter of just take your time. We took a look at her tests, and we were able to match up what standards those tests that she did poorly on were testing. And we were able to go back and reteach those things that she wasn't learning. And so, right, so the solution, the direct solutions that came out of that little simple viz, conversation with Dad, you got to do the reading log over the weekend, did some work with some study habits, got her with a tutor, but the most important part was developing an individualized math plan for that kid that helped reinforce and go back and reteach those items that she didn't know. All right, this is community has always sought an aftercare program. This is where me and the business office went head to head because they see it just as numbers. We're only 200 kids. We're never going to be able to have an aftercare program that's going to be fiscally viable. I didn't know that's what we're in the business of doing, but the business office was able to, for the previous 7 years, prevent an aftercare program, even though we had parents who work. I know almost every school that, so each year when it would come up again, we would put feelers out there for how many people are interested in aftercare. And it was never able to come up to the number that the business office said where we would break even, because that's what we're in the business of doing, breaking even. So this was one that was going to the board. This was going to be my shining moment. Came back from conference, and in full disclosure, I sent this presentation to my salesperson, who gave it to some of her friends, who really kind of shined it up a little bit for me. So this wasn't all me. People love maps. I don't know if you've heard that a bunch of times. They love maps. So I'm going in front of the board, and I'm going to get my aftercare program. So it's bells and whistles time. It's putting together something that folks are going to be impressed by. And when folks look at a dashboard or a viz, they're very impressed by it. And also, this one allowed me to tell the story in the narrative that I wanted. It presented the numbers in a way that I knew that they were there, in a way that the board had not heard, but I needed them to hear, because I needed them to know that this was something that was important to our families, and it needed to be important to them. Informative, persuasive, highly visual, and in this, I say a high level of theatrics that holds the audience attention. That's by my definition and standard, not by some of the other stuff that you're going to see out there. So this is what we came up with. Anyone's from Central New Jersey, you'll recognize New Egypt. Anybody in New Egypt? Bordentown? Ever been to Bordentown? So what I did for our board was we created this dashboard that showed the surrounding school districts on a map, because that's mesmerizing stuff. And I showed the cost per day. And over here, there's a little funny thing in New Jersey that we call, or used to call, I don't know if we still do anymore, district factor grouping. That is, the short story, how rich or poor a district is. B is that second tier district factor group, the second group of, for the purpose of taxation, communities that are, that second tier of being least capable of producing enough local taxes. So I made sure to create a group there where other schools with our demographics and other schools our size were capable of running after-school programs, and they even did before-care programs. So if Beverly can do it, and Burlington City and Mount Holly can do it, then New Hanover can do it. And what I also put up there was we have this ongoing thing with New Egypt. I don't know, for whatever reason, we don't like them, they don't like us. They run an after-school program, and not only do they run an after-school program, they're similarly demographic to us, and they charge a lot for it. So, and then I added this little part here, our cost analysis. Right? And we become profitable at 15 kids. At 15 kids for an after-school program, we will make a whopping $900. That's how small we are. But more than, and we run about a $6 million budget, right? And this was the fight for the business office. More important than making $900 was this, and this is how I really got them, because they heard about it from the community too. We're small enough. This was grocery store stuff. They would get crushed in the grocery store about why don't we run an aftercare program, right? If we have one kid sign up for aftercare, and we run an aftercare program with a teacher and some activities and an aide, one kid, if we do this for one kid, it will cost us $16,000. Round up $17,000. So I presented that as a worst case scenario. That's the worst that we're going to do. If we're able to run a program that helps one kid and one family, it's going to cost us $16,000. we really do spend a lot on paper and ink. A lot more than that. And so, the result of that viz was that. Look at that. Right? See, that's my favorite picture there. Every 5 o'clock, the bass plays taps, and they just know, kids that grow up in the area, they just know to stop and salute the flag every day at 5 o'clock. So they went for the Aftercare program beginning the first day. And I was able to report back to them at the end of September using running totals, which I think are awesome. The bottom line is the number of kids that we have per day on each of those numbered days in September. The blue line is the running sum of students who have attended the program. And so by the end of September, 156 kids attended. Oh, the best part, that when I gave that presentation, not only did they say yes to the program, but they dug the hole first, money-wise. Rather than running it as an enterprise fund, they said, okay, we'll budget $12,000 for aftercare. Whatever you fill back in is great. Worst case scenario, we lose all $12,000. We're prepared for that. So in the first month, I was able to report back to them. We had 156 kids, total kids attend at $10 a day. We were estimating the program to cost about $1,800 a month. And so in the first month, we probably lost about $200. And I was able to show to them, here's the first week where we have fairly flat attendance. And then after that first week, it just shot up and has become one of the really better things that we've done. And yes, money is important, and they were happy to hear that by the end of October, we passed break even. We have more kids signing up. We created for ourselves another big problem, though. Parents want before care. And I'm like, yeah, right, one thing at a time. But so, this was the best thing that we've done this year. More than test scores, that's important. We've made some families' lives easier. And I don't want to overstate this, but for 8 years I banged my head against the wall, and it wasn't until I was able to visualize it through Tableau that that I was able to get the board to understand, get them to understand that I'm right, because isn't that, that sometimes just understand, but people just don't accept that I'm right from the beginning. It'd be so much easier. So they saw the data spoke, I didn't speak. It wasn't me speaking against the business administrator, banging heads again on something. It was the data saying, even if this goes as far south as it can go, it's really not that bad. And so they went ahead and said yes, and now it's, again, it's the best thing that we've done this year. And we're going to get, second half of the year, we're going to get morning care, and we're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to get better. All right, that takes us right to the end. Like any good teacher at back to school night, talk your way all the way through so you don't have time for questions. Please complete the survey in the mobile app. Please complete it. Please say nice things about me, because I love being here so much. I love talking to everybody about the kind of things that a small, teeny, tiny school can do with big data, right? How we use small data to make large decisions. Hey, have an amazing, amazing rest of the time here. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.